Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Stay Healthy at Home webinar series. This week we are talking all about voting. Due to COVID-19, there have been some changes to election dates and different information about how to register to vote. So let's jump right in and get through all this information. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ashley Ritchey, and I'm the director of the New Jersey Self-Advocacy Project, which is a program of the ARC of New Jersey. My team and I support a statewide network of individual self-advocates and self-advocacy groups. We provide training, consultation, technical assistance, information or referral services, and generally just try to support the great work that self-advocates and group advisors are doing throughout the state. This webinar series is part of our Healthy Lifestyles project. And if you'd like to learn more about this program, just visit healthylifestylesproject.org. You can schedule different trainings for groups that you work with. We're doing virtual trainings similar to this, so reach out if you're interested. And just as a reminder, we welcome questions and comments throughout the webinar, and we have dedicated time at the end of this webinar to address any questions or comments that you have. So just use the questions box as it appears on your screen to let us know if you have any questions or feedback. And as a reminder, a copy of the slides that we're going to view today will be shared with you via email, along with a link of the recorded webinar sometime this week, probably within the next couple of days. And we just ask that you complete the really brief survey that's going to pop up at the end of this webinar to let us know about any future training topics that you'd like us to cover. We value your input, we want to hear from you, and we really appreciate all of the fantastic suggestions that we've received so far. And another reminder, there is a handout section on GoToWebinar, so you can check out a full version of the slides that we're going to view today. You can download it right from the handout section. Okay, so as some folks are still joining, I think this is a good time to jump into just a quick 1-minute poll. We're going to start off, just get a baseline of where everyone's at. I want to know if you are a registered New Jersey voter. So I'm going to start the poll in just a moment. Okay, and again, we would really appreciate your feedback on this. It's completely anonymous. I don't know who fills it out, but we're just trying to get a feel for how many people are registered, and we're going to post the results. So let's check it out together. Fantastic. I'm so happy to see that 90% of the folks on the webinar today are registered to vote, with just 5% not sure and 5% registered to vote in another state. So thankfully, part of the webinar today, we are going to discuss what to do if you're not sure if you are a registered voter, or what to do if you are registered in another state, moved to New Jersey, and what the process is for getting that registration updated. So again, thank you for participating in this. It's great to just get a baseline. And if you're just joining and you weren't able to participate in the poll, feel free to give us your answer in the questions box. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. So really, I mean, a big part of today's webinar is, are we ready? Are we prepared as advocates to participate in the voting process? What do we need to do to get registered? And that's an individual question. And I know a lot of us work with a lot of different people, especially folks with disabilities. So I want to make sure that staff, self-advocates, parents, that we are all prepared to participate in the process of voting. So if anybody answered, I'm not sure to the poll, I just want to share a resource with you right off the bat. The New Jersey Division of Elections website is a really fantastic resource, and we're going to return to this throughout the presentation. And again, when we end the webinar, the slides that are posted and handouts, this is a live link in the PDF. So when you go through later, you can click here and it will take you to the MI registered voter registration page. You're going to need to input your first name, your last name, and the month and year that you were born. And it will populate whether you are, in fact, a registered New Jersey voter. It will tell you when you were registered to vote, if you, in fact, are. And then if nothing comes up, if you are not registered to vote, hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will be more than prepared and ready to get registered. So I would like to just touch on, something that, we need to know what voting is, right? If we're going to be registered voters, if we're going to participate in that process, we need to know what it is. And it really is, it's your right. It is a right that we all have as soon as we reach a certain age and do certain things. And we're going to review those requirements later. But voting is really your choice and your voice and a way to create change. We're part of a big society, millions and millions and millions of people. And voting is really our voice as part of that larger society. And it's a choice. It's a choice that we get to make. We can decide if we want to be registered to vote. It's not a mandate. You don't have to be a voter. But there are definite benefits to being a voter. And when it comes down to it, voting is a choice. And we all make tons of choices every day. So let's have a discussion around some of the choices that we make. Hopefully, we have a real say in the types of relationships that we're involved with. Hopefully, we are choosing the people that are in our lives in a meaningful way. I know for a lot of folks with disabilities who work with paid staff, the choice may be less evident, but there are definitely relationships there and relationships that should be equitable and respectful of an individual's right to make different choices about the type of food that they eat, about the type of clothes that they wear, the type of music that they listen to, how they spend their time. We all get to decide those things as adults. So especially DSPs have a responsibility to make sure that the folks that they support are privy to those different choices as well. So not doing for, but helping to support someone on their behalf to let them know what are their options, what is available to you, what types of things are you interested in. And that involves, exploring different options and really knowing what's available. So why vote? Like I said before, I love this little cartoon. Your vote is really your voice. We may be one individual, part of a larger collective society. So when you cast your ballot on election day, that's really you stepping up and saying, this is how I feel, this is what I want to support. So again, it is a basic human right. And it is an opportunity to make a choice. So we're all well prepared. We're making choices all the time. We make so many decisions every day. It probably doesn't even register to us anymore. But voting especially is an opportunity for people to advocate and put other people in positions of power that represent the ideals and the things that we believe in. So I would urge you, if you haven't thought about this before, or if you'd like to have a little topic for discussion at the House later, why do you think it's important to vote? I see that 90% of you on this webinar today are registered to vote, and I'm so happy to see that. So you obviously value it. But ask the folks around you, what do they think? Do you think it's important to vote? What do they see as their role in the process of voting? It gives you a lot of food for thought, and it really helps you figure out how the people in your life are viewing this process, because it is individual, but it is part of our responsibility as U.S. Citizens, as Americans, to participate in this and to make sure that we're making choices, because those people in power, They affect all of us. And I found this nice little quote that I think really sums up what I'm trying to represent today, is that people have the right to vote here in the US, and people have fought long and hard to make sure that every person, not just certain groups of people, were able to participate in the voting process. So Franklin D. Roosevelt said the only way it's going to get taken away, the only way that we can lose that right, is by individually choosing not to participate. So I hope you all will really advocate for voting and voter participation to everybody in your life. It's critically important that everybody have that opportunity. All right, so let's get into who can vote, who has that right. So if you want to vote in a US election, you do have to be registered to vote. You can register to vote at 17 years old, but you won't be able to cast your ballot until you're at least 18. So if you're super eager, 17 years old, that's great. But just know that you can't vote by mail or go to your polling place to vote until you're at least 18. And if you want to vote in a US election, you do have to be a US citizen. So these are kind of what I call like the big three rules. These are kind of the three things, the three check boxes that you have to hit if you want to participate in the voting process. When we think about people who are excluded from participating in voting, a large group of people comes to mind. Those are folks who are currently incarcerated. They are not permitted to vote in New Jersey. But as soon as someone has completed their sentence and is released from incarceration, from jail, their voting rights are automatically restored. And that's actually a very that's sort of a recent thing in New Jersey. And New Jersey is on the progressive end of things in allowing that to happen. There is not an extensive process that that person has to go through in order to get their voting rights back. As soon as they've served that sentence, they are restored, regardless of the length of the sentence. They get their rights back once they are out of jail. And very recently, New Jersey law actually changed to restore voting rights to more than 80,000 people who are on probation or parole. So keep in mind that, in this time last year, when I was doing this training, I said that people who were on parole or probation were not permitted to vote. So this is a very, very recent change. Governor Murphy signed this into law and essentially restored those voting rights to people who are currently on probation or parole. Breaking news, this is very new, and that is very exciting. Okay, I'd like to present another poll to everybody. We've got a couple more folks on the webinar now, so we should get a bit more participation. Love it. I'd like to know, do you know, can a person who has a legal guardian register to vote? Don't Google it, don't do any research. I'm just looking to know what you think right now at this minute. Can a person who has a legal guardian register to vote and cast a ballot in an election? Let's check out the results. So 73% of you say yes, a person who has a legal guardian can register to vote. No one said no, but then 27% said they were not sure. Okay, so I would like to address that question right away. I have a guardian. Can I vote? Yes, yes, and yes. Absolutely. I will say that in doing these trainings, voting trainings throughout the state for groups of parents, self-advocates, and staff, I will say that this is one piece of misinformation that is quite pervasive. A lot of people will say, I have a guardian, I can't vote, someone told me that, or I've heard that. I'm here to say, and I hope that you walk away from this webinar ready to tell anybody, you can absolutely vote regardless of guardianship. Most guardianship agreements do not explicitly cover voting rights. They tend to focus on things like financial issues or decisions about medical treatment and health. You can be someone who has a guardian, whether it's a relative, a friend, family member, or a person assigned through the Bureau of Guardianship Services, regardless, you can vote. Just keep in mind that you do need to be registered. You do need to be at least 18 at the time of the election. And you do need to be a U.S. citizen if you are voting at a U.S. election. But yes, absolutely you can. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How do I register to vote? You have to fill out a voter registration application. They are asking for basic information on the form, and we are going to review it together very closely in just a couple minutes. But one point about the voter registration application, it's completely free. You don't even have to put a stamp on the form. You just fold it in a certain way and mail it out. Right now, because of the public health and safety concerns posed by COVID-19, it's not possible to register to vote in person in New Jersey. The governor has asked that folks refrain from going to visit their county board of elections or physically showing up in person to get a voter registration application. Instead, there are different websites where you can download and print those forms, again, for free, and mail them to your county commissioner of registration or the superintendent of elections for your county. And that information, again, this is a live link right here. The blue underlined part right here. If you click on this, it'll bring up a list of every county in New Jersey. You click on your county, and that's the address. So you can even call or write to the county commissioner of registration to have them mail a copy to your house if, say, you don't have a printer. That is an accommodation that they should make for you if that's something that you need. And just as I'll repeat this later as well, but the registration deadline to vote in the next election is 21 days, 3 weeks before the election day. So in certain cases, pre-COVID, you may have been able to show up at your county commissioner of registration's office, fill out a form right then and there, and register to vote on site. Right now, that's not necessarily the case because, again, there is a health crisis that we're dealing with. So in every case, we're asking folks who can to register at home, mail in the registration form, and opt to vote by mail. So, like I said, the voter registration applications can be printed from the New Jersey Division of Elections website. This website is fantastic. It's chock full of information. Again, it is a government website. So you see the URL is nj.gov. So the information on here has been vetted and approved by the state of New Jersey Division of Elections. It's they're trying to give you the most accurate information in the most streamlined way. So this process is totally demystified for you. And there's a button right here when you go to the website, register to vote, and it'll bring up 21 different registration applications by each county, as well as a statewide registration application. But it's such a fantastic resource, and it's just a really, I would urge you guys to check this out after the webinar. Scroll through if you have any questions or you want to check out the different publications that the state has released on voting. It's a really great resource. So this is what the page looks like when you click on register to vote. It'll populate a list of all of the county registration applications, as well as statewide voter registration applications in 12 different languages, which I think is pretty great. Because again, this process should be open. It should be accessible to everybody. There should be no exclusions in the way of language. So right here, you've got 12 different languages by application. So that's really exciting. And And I wanted to really break down the voter registration application. So again, this one happens to be from the Warren County Commission of Registration, but each county looks pretty similar. Unions look similar to Salem, to Cumberland. This is all, it's kind of just the same type of information. This is generally what it looks like. And it's asking for very basic information. So in box number 1 right here, you would identify whether you're a new registrant. So remember, when you checked, am I registered before? If your name did not come up, you put your name spelled correctly in there with the month and the year that you were born. If nothing comes up and it is not telling you that you're a registered voter, because I see a question that came up before, I would say that there's potentially a problem with the application that you submitted maybe a couple years ago, or something has changed where you've moved, changed address. But if you're a totally new registrant and you've never registered before, you would check this box. Just like if you moved and you need to update your address, you would check this box. If you've changed your name, if you've changed your signature, and a little bit more on this point later. If you wish to change your political party affiliation, or whether you are registering and you wish to vote by mail. Okay, so there's a couple different options in this one little box, the first question, but this basically tells your commissioner of elections, why are you filling out this form? Are you brand new to the system, or has something changed for you? Okay, and again, they do ask you if you are a U.S. citizen. If you are not a U.S. citizen, you are not permitted to vote in U.S. elections, so they ask that you don't complete the form. And then it asks, are you at least 17? Because remember, you can be 17 when you fill out this form, but you have to be at least 18 when you go to vote. And then you'll see number 4 just covers your full name. They are asking for your date of birth, gender, which is identified as an optional question on the form. And number 7 covers your New Jersey driver's license number or non-driver ID. So again, some people in different trainings have said, well, I don't have an ID, so I can't register to vote. Or I don't have a license, I don't register to vote. That is not accurate either. So they can also get you registered to vote if you provide the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. In general, we don't like to share this information with a lot of people. It's unique to us, it's private information. But if you do not have a driver ID or a driver's license, that's another option. So just keep that in mind. I would also suggest go to the DMV, go to motor vehicle, and get the non-driver ID. It will come in handy for a bunch of different reasons. Going to the State House to attend a public hearing is one reason. Or joining us for our Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month event. You need ID to get into the State House. Okay, so moving on to, they need to know where you live, what your home address is. This will determine the location of your polling place. So you need to fill out if you have an apartment number, the name of your town, the name of your county, state, New Jersey, and then your zip. And if for whatever reason your mailing address is different from your home address, clarify that. If you are a registered voter who, say, registered to vote in another county or another city in New Jersey, you're going to need to check this box, address change, and then identify the last address where you were registered to vote. And again, if you checked name change, you need to clarify your former name in number 11. And then number 12, they ask for a daytime phone number and an email address, but just like gender, both of these are optional questions. You do not have to fill out that information in order to effectively register to vote. Okay, so that's pretty much the bulk of what they're asking for. Let's jump down and see, get a little bit more in depth. Question number 13 does ask if you would like to declare a political party affiliation. So remember, in box number 1, they asked if that's why you were filling out the form. Were you trying to tell them that you wanted to be a member of a certain political party. That really determines whether or not you will be permitted to vote in the primary election. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But if you do want to be a member of a certain political party, and again, it's optional, you don't have to declare affiliation. But if you do, you would check this box, yes, and then write the name of the party. If you do not wish to be affiliated, check no. So again, in New Jersey, if you register, say, as a member of the Democratic Party, you would check the box and say, yes, the party name is Democratic. And then you would be permitted to vote only for Democratic candidates in that primary election. So just keep that in mind when you're filling out the form, if you do have an interest in participating in what's called the primary election. And again, we'll get into the details on that in just a bit. Again, the mail-in ballot or vote by mail ballot, which is optional, you can identify whether you wish to receive a mail-in ballot for all future elections here, or if you only want to let them know that you want your ballot to a specific address that may be different from the mailing address that you mentioned above. And just like they ask you in box 1, are you looking to change your signature? They do require that you sign off on the registration form. And in most cases, the signature of the registration application is checked against the signature, the book that you'll sign if you show up to your polling place on election day to vote. But you want to make sure that you sign it as you normally would sign, and then date it, the current date that you're filling out the application. And another issue or question that we've gotten often when we do these trainings, often from staff or family members that say, my loved one or someone that I support doesn't have use of their hands, they don't write on their own. Can I fill out the form for them? Can I assist? Absolutely. If the person who's applying to vote can't complete this form for whatever reason, the person who assists them in completing the form needs to put their information here. So you would just write your name, the date, your address. This is something that I would say comes in handy if you're registering a whole group home. You might be the contact person, and they may just call you to verify that you are who you are and that you did want to help this person fill that out. But often this is just to let them know that that may account for why the signature is different, or if they have any questions and need to clarify any information on the form, they can contact you. So in the fine print, they do have, I want to call attention to this bolded piece down here. If you've gotten to the bottom of the form, and that's the last thing that you have to do is just sign off. If you still have questions, again, the New Jersey Division of Elections website is great. But I would also say, if you need more information, if you want to vote by mail or become a poll worker or make sure that your polling place is accessible, by the way, every polling place should be accessible. You can certainly request that information and they would send the information to you. And like I said before, you can kind of a little bit arts and craftsy here, I guess. You see this number 1 over here? You just fold the form there, fold it a second time here, and then put a little piece of tape right there. Pop it in the mailbox. There's no postage necessary. You do not have to pay to get registered to vote. So that is something good to know, I think. It shouldn't cost you a dime. And then on the back of the form, they also remind you that you do have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be at least 17 when you fill out the form, but 18 to vote. And you have to be a resident of the state and county at least 30 days before the election. So if you're moving, make sure to check when the election's happening. Try to get this information in as soon as possible. And just keep in mind that this form has to be received by the commissioner of registration in your county at least 21 days before an election. And it does say if for whatever reason the form is not accepted, you should be notified of how you can correct the application, give them the information they need to complete it, or whatever they need. And you can reach the New Jersey elections, New Jersey government hotline for elections at 1-877-NJ-VOTER. Okay, so I hope this helps to kind of demystify the application. It's really basic information, right? You know all this stuff, and if you don't, it's totally okay to ask a family member, a friend, or someone that you trust to help you fill it out. Okay. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the vote by mail ballot and that whole process. So you do have to be a registered voter to vote by mail. You can't not fill out an application. You do have to fill out an application, and you can either download a vote by mail ballot registration specifically, or like we talked about before, you can identify that you're interested in voting by mail when you fill out your general voter registration application. Okay, so you can fill out the special vote by mail ballot. You can download it here, or you can fill out the general voter registration application and check that box that you want to vote by mail. And just a fun fact, vote by mail applications or vote by mail ballots used to be called absentee ballots. They were really designed to allow folks who were in the military and serving overseas at the time of an election to participate in local, state, and federal elections in the US. That is no longer the case. You don't need a special reason to vote by mail, but you do have to choose one or the other. You have to choose whether you're going to vote by mail and cast your ballot that way, or whether you're going to show up in person at your polling place on election day. So there's pros and cons to both, right? You have to weigh it. You have to decide based on your life and experience what makes the most sense. I will say just make sure to download the vote by mail application that corresponds to your county. So if you live in Mercer County, make sure that you download that particular application by clicking here. It'll be a full list of all 21 counties. Pick the one that corresponds to where you currently reside. And if you would like an application to vote by mail to be mailed to your house for free at no cost, contact the New Jersey Division of Elections at this number. This is their current number. Okay. And again, you do have to choose. If you vote by mail, you can't go to your polling place too. It's one or the other. So this is a snippet of the application for a vote by mail ballot. And a ballot is the word that we use to say, this is my vote. When we go to vote, we cast our ballot at our polling place. This is kind of like voter lingo. So in the box number 1, here we go. We are applying for a mail-in ballot for, and you can only check one option. Do you want to vote by mail for all future elections or only one of the following? The general election in November. So this November, the general election will be a time when we get to vote for who will be the next US president. So it's getting a lot of attention. This is a big vote. It's a big election. Or do you want to only vote by mail for the primary, typically held in June, but it is actually rescheduled this year due to COVID-19? And we're going to get into that in just a bit. But there are various types of elections that you can also participate in. Municipal elections, so these are the folks who are running your town, your township. There are school board elections, in some cases fire, who's going to be the fire chief, fire marshal, or if there's a special type of election that's happening in your area and you need to let them know the date. So keep in mind that you have to let the county clerk know if you move. If your mailing address changes for whatever reason, it's your responsibility to let the county clerk know. Otherwise, your ballot will continue to be mailed to the address that they have on file. So You would just provide much of the same information on the general vote by mail or voter registration application. First name, last name, middle initial if you have it, a suffix, as well as the address at which you are registered to vote. Okay, so if you're already registered, fill out that here. If you're not, step back and fill out that general voter registration application. They do want to know when you were born. They do want to know if you have a preference for where the ballot is mailed to, if it's different from the address at which you were registered to vote, as well as a daytime phone number and email address, which is optional. And again, this is a live link. This is included in the PDF under handouts, all of the slides. You can click right there and it'll bring you to a site where you can download and print the application for a vote by mail ballot. Keep in mind that you need to complete the application and return it to your county clerk's office at least 7 days before the election. So if you want to vote in the primary in July, you need to make sure that application gets there at least 7 days before the election. Normally, and this is information that we would share if we were doing this training just 6 months ago, normally you could show up to your county clerk's office up until 3 o'clock on the day before an election in order to complete the application. Right now, that is not the case. We are not going, we are still under a stay-at-home order. We're advised to stay at home as much as we can. So we are not trying to show up to a county office if we don't absolutely have to. This information can be found online. So either download and print it at home from this website or contact your county board of elections to get the application mailed to you. And when we look at the vote by mail application, again, you want to double check the information is correct and accurate for you, for the person who's registering to vote by mail. And if the information is accurate, it checks out, it's readable, it's legible, the county clerk will mail you your ballot. So again, you will not be able to vote in person once you have that ballot because it will be mailed to your residence. And we all get the opportunity to vote just one time per person. And again, as with anything else, if you're reviewing this application, the vote by mail application, and you're not sure about something, I hope that you'll feel free to contact the Self-Advocacy Project. We're happy to help. But also the Division of Elections is a fantastic resource. So the information would be included on the website that I just shared. Or ask a staff member, ask a family member. Sometimes it just helps to have someone else check out the information as well. And keep in mind that you have to have your ballot filled out. You have to let them know who you want to vote for on your official ballot by 8 p.m. on election day. So you can't send in the ballot the next day. You can send it in early. You can send it in, the day that you receive it if you fill it out that same day. But you need to make sure it gets there before the official polls close on election day. So that's 8 p.m. is your deadline. And as I mentioned before, the primary election, which is essentially the election that determines who will be able to run in the general election in November, the primary election was rescheduled from June until July 7th, 2020. And the governor issued a statement that voters are strongly encouraged to vote by mail. There will still be options to vote at polling places throughout the state, but in the interest of health and safety, folks are asked to vote by mail. If you're already registered and you want to vote by mail, they will reach out to you and see if that's what you want to do. They could send you that information. And Union County developed a really great short little YouTube video about the process of voting by mail in New Jersey. So I would urge you guys to check that out. That's a great resource, also included in our resources one pager in the handout section. So, as I said, if you are a registered voter who has identified that you want to vote by mail, you will get a sample ballot at least a week before the election. And it's going to look something like this. This is obviously an older one that I got from online. It's 2008, but generally they look similar to this. The sample ballot they'll send you a sample ballot so that you can prepare your vote before you get your official ballot. So it will list all of the candidates in the election and any special questions or votes that you're able to vote on and decide how you feel about. Sometimes that varies by township, sometimes that varies by county. So just pay attention if there are any special questions to be voted on. It will also identify where your polling place is. If you are someone who wants to go to your polling place on election day. So again, you have to choose. Is it vote by mail or vote in person? That's up to you. So keep in mind that you do have to register at least 21 days before an election after living in the same county for 30 days. You only have to register one time unless you move to a different county or you're moving to New Jersey from a different state. So when we went through the application before, that kind of clarified, I hope, some of the information. They just want to know your current address. And if you are already a registered voter, you don't have to register again before every election. That often comes up. Someone will say, oh, I registered to vote 20 years ago. Am I expired? Do I need to re-register? No. If you stay in the same place, no address change, no name change, you do not have to re-register. So other reasons that you might need to update that voter registration, if you move, if say you change your name, if you update your signature. And again, this can come into play in some cases where if you show up to your polling place on election day and they compare the current signature that you provided in the poll book against the signature that you provided when you first registered to vote, if there's major concerns about how different the signatures look or they have doubt that you are who you say you are, that may cause an issue. Hopefully that can be rectified by producing an identification if absolutely necessary, but in general, they want to make sure that this information stays the same, and if it doesn't, you have to let them know. Just like a political party affiliation. If you want to register as a member of a certain political party, you need to let them know in order to vote in the primary election. So identification is somewhat sticky. It's not required in order to vote, but just in case there's a question about you are who you are, or maybe you're new to that particular township or just recently registered, it's always a good idea to have some type of document that includes your current address. So the really important phrase here is current address, not where you used to vote or where you just moved to but you're not registered to vote. It needs to be your current address. That could be something like a government ID or even a document with your name and address on it, like a government issued social security check or a bank statement. In some cases, some websites say you can even have like a club card that has your photo and name and address on it as well. So as we mentioned before, the general election is really the opportunity to vote for federal and state leadership. So this year, the general election will be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. You will have the opportunity to vote for the President of the United States, as well as different members of the New Jersey legislature. The primary election, however, remember that's normally held in June, but it was pushed to July 7th due to COVID. That is when registered members of certain political parties can choose who will run as their candidates in November in the general election. So if you really want to vote in the primary and you want to have a say for who will represent the Republican Party in November or the Democratic Party in November or the Green Party in November, make sure that you are registered and declare a party affiliation. Most people in New Jersey, most registered voters, are not affiliated, interestingly. So it's not a requirement, but it is only those registered party members that can participate in the primary. So, as I said before, Governor Murphy did ask that anybody who can vote by mail in the July 7th primary do that. They will have polling places open, at least one polling place in every municipality, every township in the state. So if you really feel strongly about going to vote in person, that is still an option for you. Governor Murphy also explicitly stated that every vote will be counted, whether it's cast in person at your polling place or by mail. That's another piece of misinformation that folks sometimes spread. Sometimes people say, well, vote by mail ballots don't really count. They only use them to break a tie. That is categorically incorrect. Every vote counts regardless of whether it is vote by mail or in person at a polling place. So just keep that in mind. And if you have questions about where is your polling place, where is it located, you can find that information on the Division of Elections website. And this happens to be the address of the Arc of Warren County. So no one lives there, but if they did, this would be their polling place. It would be at the Washington Borough Fire Hall. So if you've ever voted before, you may have gone to an elementary school, a municipal building, or a fire hall. These are common places in your community. And generally, polling places are situated so that no one is traveling a very far distance to go to their polling place on election day. They try to make it local to your address. So this information should also be shared with you when you get that form back from your county Board of Elections. They should tell you the location of your polling place. They should also share that information with you on the sample ballot that comes to your house a week or so before the election. That's kind of your time to prep, to look at the form, to decide who you're going to vote for, and also make sure you know your polling place location. So again, for the primary elections on July 7th, there will be at least one polling location where you can vote in person in every single township in New Jersey. They will be social distancing, sanitizing the voting machines because they are touchscreen. So I think that the governor acknowledged that some people prefer to vote in person, but that some folks may have difficulty even filling out the form. So this is an answer to that. It's still an option to vote in person if you wish to do that. And the primary election will allow you to cast your vote if you're a registered member of an affiliated political party. You will get to vote for the nominations for U.S. President, as well as Cory Booker's U.S. Senate seat, and all 12 of the state seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. So that's our federal representatives. And again, these are a couple photos of some polling places. Again, it should be an accessible place. It should be open to everybody. And you are required to vote at your assigned polling place. It's not something that you can, choose to go to another place. You need to go to the place that has been assigned to you based on your current address. And keep in mind that New Jersey's polling places are open all day, 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. So if you are voting by mail and opting not to vote in person, you still need to have your ballot received by the county board of elections by 8 p.m. on election day. So yes, again, 2020 election the general election is Tuesday, November 3rd. And we're going to check out what these voting machines look like. In New Jersey, they are largely touchscreen. So you are just using your finger to identify who you want to vote for and how you want to vote. So that's a little picture of kind of what they look like. The Self-Advocacy Project has hosted different voting booth demos at programs throughout the state. So this particular event happened at the Arc of Union County at a Council 2 meeting. So self-advocates had the opportunity to test out a voting booth. And this is a free option offered by the County Board of Elections. This happens to be Union County. But if you click this link here after the webinar's finished, you can find the information for your particular County Board of Elections and check out and see, are they offering voting booth demos? And again, this is probably for the future when it's safe to be in close proximity to other people, but something to keep in mind for the future. As I said, voting places should be accessible. Polling places should be open to everybody. They should be integrated, meaning that someone who requires, say, a voting machine that's a little bit lower so that they can reach it from a wheelchair or mobility device, they should not be set off in the corner or in another area apart from their fellow citizens. Everybody should be voting in generally the same area and in the same way. And just keep in mind, the voting machine actually does kind of can be raised and lowered with, just a couple people on either side bringing it up or down. And this is a demo. So on election day, you're not going to have two people looking at how you're voting unless you ask for assistance from poll workers. In this case, I think we were voting on our favorite ice cream flavor. So, it was just a way to get comfortable with the machine itself. And it's just you just push the screen where you want to vote and it tallies the votes. And keep in mind, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, discrimination is not legal. So reasonable accommodation should be made to make sure every person can vote at their polling place if that's what they choose to do. Communication should be effective and complementary to that person. And your polling place should have different auxiliary aids or things that help people vote available. So that may mean assisted listening equipment, registration forms available in Braille or large print, as well as physical access to polling places, whether that's a ramp or a door that can be opened by pressing a button instead of pulling the handle. So everybody has the right to vote, even if they have an intellectual or developmental disability. I would repeat that again. Just keep in mind, every person has the right to vote if they're registered, at least 18, and a U.S. citizen. And people have the right to make their choices about how they want to vote and who they want to vote for. Even if you're a staff member or a family member or a sibling assisting a person with a disability in the voting machine, you want to do so in a way that is just that, supportive of their choice. So take advantage of that sample ballot that comes in the mail. Check that out and make sure that the person that is voting and that you would be supporting knows what their options are before going into the booth. And I always say that you have the right to keep your opinion to yourself. You do not have to share this information with anybody if you don't want to. It's really a choice you get to make, and you can keep it to yourself or you can shout it from the rooftops. It's really your choice. Another note on accessibility, there is a New Jersey Voters Bill of Rights, and it's fantastic, and it can be found by clicking this link. And if you do run into problems at the polls, the state of New Jersey has established a hotline that you can call that day to address any issues or file any complaints. That's the number there. And it's also available on our resources page or resources handout. So we know we have the right to vote, regardless of guardianship status, regardless of medical diagnoses. But let's discuss our responsibilities. One major responsibility that we have is to be an informed voter. The facts matter and sources matter. So just as I pointed out before, that the information presented thus far is from the state of New Jersey's Division of Elections website. It's a reputable source. It's approved by the state. It's in line with current regulations. I want to point out that this website, votesmart.org, is fantastic, and it's nonpartisan. So they're not getting paid by any particular political party to present information to you. It's impartial. So this is a great place to start. Justfacts.votesmart.org, and it's included on our resources page as well. But just know that it's important to be critical of the information that you're getting. You want to be an informed voter. You want to know why you're voting for the person you're voting for. And you want to know where they stand on different issues. This website actually lets you track legislators. And if they're current legislators, you can see how they voted on different issues. You can read quotes and see what they've said about different bills that affect people with disabilities or special education programs. So I would really suggest that you check that out. And the League of Women Voters of New Jersey has a really great comprehensive website, a ton of great resources. And again, it's a .org, not .com. So they're not making money for pushing a certain message. They are just presenting the information to you in a very straightforward way. So this is another resource that you can certainly check out. Once you get your sample ballot in the mail, you know who's running, you know their names, you know their parties. Start Googling. And you can start here or start at VoteSmart. And I think that about sums up our slides. I'd love to check out the questions. I know we had a couple questions come through. Let me see what folks have to say about this. Oh, wow. Okay, great. I'm going to start right here. So happy to hear that you are a registered voter, Melissa. Okay, Julia, I hope we helped figure out vote by mail. I hope we demystified that process. You really just have to fill out the voter registration application and check that box that you want to vote by mail. From there, they will either mail the ballot, they should mail a ballot to you to fill out the vote by mail application. And you won't need to fill it out again if you identify that that's how you want to continue voting. If you move to a different county, yes, you do need to re-register. Not re-register, but you need to update the information. So you'll need to fill out the voter registration application with your current information and send that back in. And again, it's free to do that. You just want to make sure the information is accurate to your current location, because that will determine where you're able to vote. How do you fill out an application for a vote by mail ballot? Yeah, I think we just covered that. Hopefully that is helpful. And if you do wish to declare a political party affiliation, there's a particular space on the form, on that general voter registration form. So you would just click that box and fill in the party that you wish to affiliate with. And that way you'll be allowed to vote in the primary election for that political party. Is the registration deadline 21 calendar days or 21 business days? That's a good question. I believe it's 21 calendar days, so 3 full weeks prior to the election. Good question, Michelle. I moved to a new town 2 years ago. How do I find out my new polling location? Very good question. That information would be sent to you after you've updated your information. So if you move to a new town but you haven't yet updated the county division of elections about your new location, you might your ballots, if you're a vote by mail voter, your ballot may have been sent to your old location. So you're going to want to fill out a new voter registration form with your current address and make sure that that is received at least 21 days prior to the election. And when I'm applying for a vote by mail, a stamp is needed when applying for a vote by mail ballot. I believe that it should be free. It should be the same process. It doesn't cost money to register. So that's something, again, that shouldn't be a barrier to someone participating in voting. It shouldn't cost anything. And just a question about party affiliation and primaries. So if you have not declared a party affiliation, so Michelle has asked that if you do not want to declare a party affiliation, so you want to be an unaffiliated voter, like I think it's something like 2.4 million voters in New Jersey are, you are not able to vote in the primary. That is correct. You have to declare a party affiliation in order to vote in the primary election. But you can still vote in the general election in November. Oh, great question about guardians in the voting booth. Yes, absolutely. If the person who is voting would like assistance in the voting booth, it is within their rights to ask for assistance from a guardian, any person that they choose, or a person can show up to their polling place on election day and ask for assistance. And two poll workers from two different political parties will assist them in the booth. So you can bring your own assistance or you can ask for that at the polling place. A question about physical disability and voting. Even if you are not able to have use of your hands to, say, fill out, to touch the voting machine, yes, that's an accommodation that can be made. If the person can communicate that they want to vote for this particular person, someone else should be able to do that on their behalf, as long as that is their choice. Yes, that's an accommodation that should be made. If the person just does not have use of their hands, I think that would be more a reasonable accommodation. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for the really thoughtful questions. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to get in touch. We really appreciate you participating in this webinar. And as I said before, you can download the slides that we just saw, that we just reviewed together, by clicking on the Handouts tab and downloading Ready to Poll, what you need to know to cast your vote in 2020. Or an email will be sent to you within the next couple days with a certificate of completion, an archive of this recorded webinar, as well as a copy of the slides. Thank you all so much, and I hope that you'll fill out the survey. Take care.